kale, wax beans, red coconut curry sauce, and a fish cake with cucumber and tomatoes. I'm going to talk about Cinderella and the Happytime Murders, and then James is going to talk about some other stuff. Okay, so I should say that both of these are not exactly kid stories, really, but like this bunch of Muppets and very much the language and whatever, not for children, but they're both comedies, and I like how they did this one way more. I didn't expect to. When I first put it on, I thought, oh gosh, this is terrible, but
so it's all the one. It's almost like karaoke, except done really well of 70s and 80s hits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's actually quite well done, the music. The rest of the stuff I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I'd probably find it boring.
And they changed the story a little bit. And the stepsisters and the stepmother, they're not evil. They just have
problems.
Yeah, they're products of their society and whatever. And so I actually like the changes that they made to the story, because who wants to see do you want to see another remake of Cinderella or any of the fairy tale things? You know that Disney did a good job on it. Why do you want to try to do another version, honestly? So but then you see this, and this is a little bit different. They've changed things up a bit. So whatever, it's fun too. Happytime Murders. This one seemed a lot longer than it was. There were some funny jokes, but it just didn't hold together as a story as well. They didn't do as good a job. And this one, you didn't have the fun singing and stuff and all the dancing that Cinderella
It's a comedy
had.
with all the murders?
Yeah, it's well, they're puppet murders.
Oh, there.
Yeah.
I kind of peeked in on that. It did kind of look funny. It had Melissa McCarthy in it.
Yeah.
And she always seems to be funny.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if she's lugging around weight or not.
Yep.
She's got good timing and all that sort of stuff.
But I don't know if all the, without all the F-bombs and stuff like that, it wouldn't have been that interesting. And I don't find swearing that interesting. So honestly, I didn't think it was that good. So James going to talk to you about some of these things. I don't know what. So go ahead, James.
Okay, so I left off exhorting, it might have got cut off, exhorting powers that be in the United States to get everything that still survives on records on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and frankly, assassination of Robert F. Kennedy out there. So these guys claim that as of 2005, there were 1 million documents on the Kennedy assassination that still have to be released. They were supposed to get released in 2017. Trump decided not to. I'm not sure why. But you'd think he'd want to reveal what the deep state was like, you know? The deep state going back to 1963. But no, he passed on it, and apparently, I think it was Clinton had required that it be, I think it was something like law. 2017, where the clock's ticking. I'd like to see this stuff revealed. Now, what these guys, their thesis seems to be that the mafia did it. And these guys' thesis seem to be, or this guy, Shine, David E. Shine, seems to be the mafia did it. Contract on America, like I used to joke about Newt Gingrich. His contract with America was really a contract on America, on the working class and middle class people, for the benefit of the rich. I'm talking about the super rich or mega rich or whatever you want to call them or not call them. I don't care what you call them. If you want to call them 4-letter words, that's okay with me. You'll save me the effort and the embarrassment. But I do think those 4-letter words sometimes, more times than I'd like. So, and it's not just the Koch brothers. Pretty well every capitalist in the United States, short of Warren Buffett, is a buffoon. And so these guys' thesis is a little bit more interesting. They're talking about the cover-up. Now, in this crazy documentary, the schlockumentary movie, they say something, the only way to keep a secret between two friends, between two people, is to make sure one of them's dead. It's something like that. It's apparently a proverb. You know, like, and so they're saying, how in heck's name could this secret been kept about who killed JFK? Well, you know, like, there's a lot of different, there are at least 2 different cover-ups going on. Okay? Now, the way the mafia operates is they don't really care if people know about what they're doing. It's like a wide open secret. It's not an open secret, it's a wide open secret. People know that they're committing all sorts of crimes, including killing people. And the important thing in this connection is killing people. Because anyone who knows anything knows that they kill not just people who are testifying against them, or in revenge people who have testified against them. They will kill people who could testify against them. So when they say, oh, the only way to ensure a secret is kept is if between 2 people is make sure one person is dead. Yeah, that's the way the mafia operates. Don't go around saying stupid stuff like that, because, you know, like, it's like Bruce Cockburn saying, people see through you. He's saying it too many times. He just kept on repeating it. You should have just used it as a refrain, you know, like blah, 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 verses, and then refrain. People see through you, and blah, 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 blah. But he kept on repeating it. You know, when people repeat too much, what is it? It's like, methinks the lady doth protest too much, something like that. Shakespeare, and it's someone talking about Lady Macbeth, who's as guilty as sin. So maybe Bruce Cockburn doesn't quite believe his thesis. The people that he's singing about being not just translucent, but transparent. So yeah, you know, like when it comes to a lot of things, frankly, I see through Bruce Cockburn. He's at least translucent, and sometimes pretty transparently, translucently, sometimes pretty transparently, well, you know, when you're talking about someone who's about 80 years old or something like that, to call them innocent is kind of an anachronism. We talk about innocence when people are, let's say, teenagers or children or infants, or maybe even not quite adults, or maybe not 25 or whatever. But when someone gets up to 80 or something like that, they're kind of responsible for their opinions. You know, it's not innocence so much as ignorance. That's a different matter. Believe me, I'll be talking more about Bruce Cockburn, and not just in another installment. It'll be several other ones. You know, Bruce, do more and wider reading, and try to mix and match. You know, like, don't just go with echo chamber stuff. Like, I guess you went to Nicaragua back in the day, in the 80s, and you seem to have been a big supporter of Daniel Ortega. Ortega is acting much as he acted back then. He just doesn't quite have the media behind him as much as he did back then. I mean, he was doing ethnic cleansing, borderline genocide, people on the Mosquito Coast. Yeah, in the 80s. Yeah, he was a bad guy. He was a revolutionary terrorist, you know, like a man after Vladimir Ilyich, is it Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, better known as, infamously known as Lenin. And he liked using that term, revolutionary terrorism. He just came out and said that's what they'd be doing. And guess what? That's what they did. And they've been doing it ever since. And that's commies of all stripes, including nationalist commies, like people like Robert Mugabe, junk like that. Nelson Mandela never renounced terrorism. I'm getting this out of his autobiography, not a biography. He's a terrorist, a revolutionary terrorist. He was the spear. He set up the spear of the party. I gather after Gandhi got the British or the English out of India, he's going and saying, that was there, this is here. We're not going to do that. I'm going to have the spear of the party here. We're going to be doing not just violence, but terror. And so a lot of people think, oh, he was like Gandhi. This is out of his autobiography. Autobiography, read it. And then apply it properly, please. I'm not going to say thank you until you do it, morons. And yeah, so let me specify. What you are oxymorons. Oxy is Greek for short, sharp. Moron means dull. You are sharp in the sense that you think you're sharp. And
well, that's not my audience. My audience are not idiots. They wouldn't be watching.
I hope not. I hope not. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I'm talking to a particular group of people. I should be careful. I'm hoping that people that watch Pauline are very, very open to ideas, lots and lots of ideas. So I apologize to Pauline and to anyone out there who's as open to ideas as Pauline is. So I'm talking to the people who'd be resistant. Other people, I don't think they have to be talked to. Anyway, these folks, there's a couple of them, Lavar Waldron and Tom Hartman, they think the mafia did it, and they actually say they don't think anyone in the CIA had much to do with it, except maybe possibly the head of the CIA in Miami, a guy called David, at this point in time, 1963, David Morales, or something like that. And even then, they're kind of skeptical. They have very little on someone by the name of E. Howard Hunt. And it's fascinating. So they say the mafia basically did the the assassination of JFK, in order to prevent being prosecuted by him in a second term. JFK would have been going to Dallas in order to prepare for an election about a little less than a year afterwards. So it was a campaign sort of thing, and the mafia did not, they get that right, they didn't want him elected to another term. But they had other motives. Sometimes you can kill two birds with one stone. And they wanted to get rid of Castro as well. And so what they really wanted to do as well was kill Kennedy and use that as a motivation to the American people, and hence the American government, to go in and invade Cuba and get rid of Castro, preferably kill him. And they wanted both. They wanted to get rid of Kennedy, and they wanted to get rid of Castro. Now these guys say their motivation, they figured that, that is the mafia, figured that when they killed Kennedy, the mafia had already been involved in a plan to overthrow Castro, and that it was so secret, top secret, that the federal government would shut it up and shut up everything, as they did. There are two conspiracies. There's the conspiracy of the mafia, according to these guys, to kill Kennedy. And then there's the conspiracy by the government, spearheaded not really by LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, the successor of Kennedy, but it was engineered partly by him, but mainly by Robert Kennedy, the president's brother, to hush the whole thing up and blame it on a lone gunman. The government didn't arrange to have that lone gunman killed, but they were going to blame it on Oswald. So they're right about the government doing that, spearheaded by Robert Kennedy. But they're wrong about the mafia wanting that. The mafia wanted it to look like a conspiracy of left-wingers to kill Kennedy, left-wingers specifically from Cuba, so that the American people would get all riled up after Kennedy died and force the government into invading Cuba. That's what they wanted. And it wasn't just the mafia. It was members of the CIA and lots, from what I can tell, lots and lots of disaffected Cuban refugees or emigres, people who left Cuba after Castro took over, when he took it over and after he took it over. And many of the people who were most against Castro had actually been allies of his in getting rid of Bautista, Fulgencio Batista. And many of them, those like Manolo Ray, and I'm trying to think of another name. I think these guys kind of pussyfoot around the leader of the Alpha 66, because they were allies of a left-winger, but he says that they were ultra-conservative. I'm going, well, maybe. But there was another one who was, I'm trying to think of his name, Manoyo. I think he was a left-winger too. He'd actually been part of the coalition. One of those two guys was actually a socialist, part of a coalition that set up power after they got rid of Batista, the dictator Batista. And then, typical of communists, when they're in a coalition and they come to power, this is what happened in Russia. They were in a coalition that got rid of the Romanovs, the imperial dynasty in Russia, and then about half a year later, the communists got rid of the people who were in the coalition. Well, they shunted them aside. They didn't really start killing, well, they started killing their own, actually, less than 10 years later. But many of those poor folks, they killed. They missed the Menshevik leader. He managed to escape. I think he eventually ended up in the United States and became a bit of a university lecturer. So these guys get it wrong. They do get it right. There were two conspiracies. There's the mafia conspiracy to cover it up, and there's eventually they're going, wow, like it's not working out. And so what they had to do, according to their lights, was kill lots and lots of people to make sure that it didn't get back to them. So it was a very bad sign of fate for you if you were part of the mafia and you got called up to do some testifying. This happened to Jack Ruby. I think it was sometime around 66 or 67, 66 we'll say. I think there was going to be a retrial or something like that. He ended up catching cancer. The trouble is he was complaining about injections people were giving him in prison. One of the guys he was conspiring with was a guy called David Ferry. And if you want to see a bit what David Ferry was like, look in the Oliver Stone movie, JFK. And one of the things David Ferry was he was a pilot. He was really creepy around young boys. He was involved in the Civil Air Patrol. The Warren Commission, of course, said they had to say, this name had kind of crept into they wanted to keep David Ferrie out of it, and they said he had absolutely nothing to do with Lee Harvey Oswald. Well, Lee Harvey Oswald did the killing in Dallas, but I think he was actually born in New Orleans, and that's where David Ferrie spent much of his life in. And then all of a sudden this picture appeared of David Ferrie, kind of like showing some kids in the Civil Air Patrol. I guess they'd be young teens or something like that. And they're all gathered around, and then off, looking at it with this kind of bemused look on his face, is this young Lee Harvey Oswald. He's like a spy even then. So much for the Warren Commission and truth. This picture wasn't photoshopped. Lee Harvey Oswald knew David Ferrie a long, long time before 1963. David Ferrie was involved with the mafia. He was involved with running guns. He was a pilot, running guns and stuff like that to people who were trying to rebel against Castro. You see how all this stuff all figures together? And it would be a surprise to me if while doing that he hadn't had some sort of connections with the CIA. But he was involved with a lot of things, and one of the things he did was he had lots of rats running around his place. That's not his friends. That's figurative rats. But and rats apparently are pretty nice folks. But these were rats, and he was presumably doing experiments on them because he was trying to come up with a cure for cancer. You think he didn't have cancer in those rats? Come on. What happens if you inject live cancer cells into someone? Maybe it doesn't cause cancer, but I'm pretty sure it does. So it could have been as easy as David Ferrie getting some sleazy doctor or something like that to inject Jack Ruby with cancer cells, and he comes down with cancer. Anyway, David Ferrie himself, 67. Jim Garrison, district attorney in New Orleans, opens up an investigation on John F. Kennedy assassination. One of the people he wants to talk to is David Ferrie. David Ferrie, before he can talk, he's dead. What are the chances? Johnny Roselli in the 70s. The mafia connection for the Chicago mafia on the West Coast and in Las Vegas. He starts yipping and yapping, "We killed him." And then he gets called up before one of the, I think he actually did a little bit of testifying. Next thing you know, he ends up in Santo Traficante's sphere of influence. Santo Traficante was the mafia boss in Tampa, Florida. And I guess it was in the bay off of Miami. So you've seen this sort of stuff in one movie we were watching. It's a movie, but this is real life. He ended up in an oil drum, floating in the water, all chopped up. Mafia. And he started yipping and yapping. Sam Giancana, the head, or one of the major heads, of the mafia in Chicago. He started saying, yeah, we did it. I had him killed, Kennedy killed. And he's dead. Huh? And I believe that was in the 70s. On and on it goes. But there's so many innocent people. I think I said Cleo Bowers was earlier this morning. It takes me a long time to wake up with some of the meds I'm on. But I think it's Lee Bowers. Bowers is the proper last name. But he was the one who saw these three tramps or bums run from the grassy knoll and try to jump a train. They did jump the train. The train just didn't take off, and I gather it was Lee Bowers who stopped it from leaving. Lord only knows how far it would have gone before they jumped off. It might have been just some place where it slowed down. Now, so he died. Lee Harvey Oswald, like when he left the school book depository right after he found out that Kennedy had been assassinated, and headed back to west I think he tried to catch a bus, and things were all jammed up. So that was over on the east side of Dallas. He wanted to go to the west side where he roomed. I think he knew the fix was in. I think he'd been FBI informant, and he'd been told that the assassination was going to take place where Kennedy was going to give his speech. How much time is left?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. So it was at the International Trade Mart, I think, over on the west side of Dallas. That's where the kind of like the parade of vehicles was supposed to end up. And apparently it was crawling with security. Lee Harvey Oswald would have been kind of at least on the periphery of the plotting and stuff like that. An FBI informant, he informed the FBI. And he would have been shocked, that the assassination actually took place on this parade. He finds out, and he knows the fix is in because he's been fed this lie. And so he got it. Why does he want to go back to his rooming place? Well, he was captured with a gun on him, a revolver. And I suspect he went back and picked up the gun. I wouldn't be surprised if he killed the guy the police guy, Tippett, on the West Coast. Again, this is conspiracy fact. Tippett apparently was the only officer in all of West Dallas. Now, I've seen what things are like. I've seen here in Lethbridge where there was an accident by the library. Every cop, there was hardly any, there were lots of cops off for some reason or another. I think it was like around holidays time or something like that. Every cop car that was on duty, I just left I finished my shift sometime around 11:30, 12 or something like that. It officially went till 11. At any rate, I was walking by the library from the old cop shop, and I saw this Jaws of Life accident. Every cop car was there. Every cop on duty was there. It would be the same thing with JFK's assassination. Be over on the east side of Dallas, the main side of Dallas. They had one person over there, and while Lee Harvey Oswald is in his rooming house, this is according to Earlene Roberts, the person who took care of the place. An officer pulls up in front of the police car, and he goes, tit, tit. That's her description. Tit, tit. That's not beep, beep, beep. Get out here. That's the way cops operate. Get out here now. He's going, tit, tit. He doesn't want people to know he's there. He also knows someone's supposed to meet him in there. Tit, tit. Police officer, Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay? Over?
No, you have a minute.
A minute. So, of course, poor Earlene Roberts, I think that's her first name. What happened to her? Oh, she gets rewarded for honesty. She gets killed. Rose Cherami. Mercado was her real name, I think. She was a stripper for Jack Ruby. And she was traveling, like a couple of days before from Florida to Dallas with a couple of guys. They dumped her off. She was found by police. She's saying these guys are going to Dallas to kill, this is 2 days before, to kill John F. Kennedy. Now, why were they going from Florida? There was an attempt on Kennedy's life, at least planned, in Tampa, that's Santa Traficante's stomping grounds, on the